Good evening. Welcome. I'm Deborah Singer, the producer of Performance on 42nd, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Whitney Museum of American Art at Philip Morris. All of our exhibitions, performances, and education programs are funded by Philip Morris companies, and we'd like to thank them for making all of these endeavors possible. This evening we are delighted to present Elliott and Orchestra premiering the new symphony Radiolaria. And after the performance, we invite you all to hang out for a little while and participate in a question and answer session with Elliott if you would like to. And this evening's performances are offered in conjunction with our two current exhibitions. Overhead, you can see Lee Borison's installation titled Underpass. And in the gallery, we have a large-scale new painting by Fred Tomaselli called Gravity's Rainbow. And unfortunately, that show isn't open right now, but if you haven't seen it, we hope you'll come back during our regular gallery hours to check it out. It's on view through January 7th. Before we begin, I just want to draw your attention to one of the inserts in your program. The Whitney Museum is offering a raffle, and you can win a sort of high-level Whitney membership, or you can win a two-boxed set of the current publications that accompany the American Century exhibition that's currently on view at the Whitney at 75th and Madison. So if you'd like to enter this raffle, please fill out your name and address, etc., and then you can turn in your form to one of the staff people as you leave after the show. And in addition, if you'd like to be added to our mailing list to be notified of other performances in the Performance on 42nd series, or if you'd like to be added to Elliott Sharp's mailing list, you can just indicate that on the side of your form, and we'll be happy to do that. So I think that's it for all the announcements. Thanks for coming and enjoy the show.
like to introduce the members of the group. Sing partners on the center. Eric Chatfield on trumpet. Frank London trumpet. Ned Roman vocal sax. Sam Burns vocal sax. Jim Pugliese percussion. Tim Smith bass clarinet. Spritzer bass clarinet, Steve Swell trombone, Julie Cullen bass trombone, Dave Watson sampler, Dick Dubois bass guitar. Thanks very much.
And then you orchestrate them. Sometimes you have a specific task to orchestrate for specific instruments, but best is to hear the sound and then figure out how to make it. And that goes for sound design too. You work with computers, any kind of orchestration. No, not at all. This is actually a bit of a departure to work with such a large ensemble of horns.
Elliott, maybe we could talk about how this piece grows out of previous ensembles or previous pieces of yours like direction?
Okay, well, in terms of ensemble, there's a certain continuity. A lot of the players I've worked with over the years in many different situations, and certainly a number of them have been members of Carbon in various ways. In terms of composition, I mean, I've always been trying to think of ways to reduce composing to a few essential elements. You know, it'd be great if you could just have like a self-replicating program, you know, 3 lines of code and the whole piece unfolds from that. But that's not really practical. So you do come up with ways to, you know, without it becomes improvisation, because I think that's a completely different thing. But giving the players core materials, very specific instructions how to manipulate them, giving them a certain amount of freedom in terms of how they develop the sounds they use, how they can apply their own techniques to them. In terms of this composition, I mean, over the years I was doing a lot of things based on mathematical models, not strictly composing from the mathematics, but using them as ways to, metaphorical ways to create systems. And with this piece, and with the last few pieces, Syndicate as well, it was more biological models of the way you can chain molecules together and using that as an analog of chaining rhythm, so you can get lots of simultaneous events that grow and transform, yet everything is connected to everything else. I don't know if that's a little ambiguous, but...
When did you really write this one?
This one was written, well, I mean, I've been thinking about it. It started out as a commission last year, and so I've been working on it really over the last year, but the way I compose it, generally I work on things in my head until I have it worked out and then just figure out a way to notate it, put it, you know, on the computer, print out the score. But really the process happens, you know, at those odd times over the course of a lot of, I mean, I put it down on paper in the last couple of weeks, but it's been over the last year.
Hi. Is your algorithmic stuff done in real time, or is it done by you have an idea what you want, you give it variables, and then it makes a sheet of notation?
No, it never works. I mean, it ultimately ends up as a sheet of notation, but it's a question of setting up rules or a system of operations that the players can follow, and then figuring out the way to notate it. How much predetermined material do you want to give them? How much rules to make sure the identity of the piece is always maintained, but yet enough that it can go in certain directions. I like when it's unpredictable. You have to have some elements of this. Again, the biological model having elements of mutation that can be introduced into the system, and yet in such a way that the players can pick up on them and make them part of the vocabulary of the piece.
Is your algorithmic done in real time, or just the bigger stuff that's done in real time is the electronic processing of the instrument?
Well, some of the things, there's one section in the piece where the players each have 4 different loops that they can play. So this would be an example of an algorithm at work here. Each player has 4 different loops. They can bring them in at any time. They can chain their loops with the loops of other players, but they can never chain multiples of their own loops together. And so that's an example of the system working in real time. The computer stuff is working in real time, on and off. But I think of an algorithm as merely a set of rules, and that they can take many forms depending on the situation. Behind you, okay?
I think of an algorithmic model as being kind of specific. How specific are your biological models? I mean, are you
They're more metaphorical. I mean, in the case of this, you could say, here are 4 molecules, here are 4 amino acids represented by 4 different loops. Each player has 4 of these. They can only combine theirs with other players.
So are you thinking of real amino acids?
No.
You're just using that
This is, I never really want to make something be a strict model. Like when I first found out about fractal geometry, I thought, wow, this could be really interesting. But it turns out it's not interesting at all to map it to a specific. I think it's just like watching, I don't know, very nice paint dry, but it's still watching paint dry.
When you're writing with algorithms or rule systems, do you test them? Do you use a computer simulation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, no, I write, I have such terrible handwriting that the computer is a lifesaver, and then it also allows you to hear the systems that you set up. Sometimes we'll set up systems using software called M, which allows you to put a lot of variables in and work with given material. I'll see how that works, and then from that decide on more specific things. When I'm writing for, I had a piece called Racing Hearts that the Hessische Rundfunk Symphony played, and for that you really can't expect the classical players strict classical players, I mean all of these players have played in those worlds too, but for an organization like that, you can't expect them to think on their feet the way a small ensemble would. So for that, it was like working out the idea, seeing how it would work with different situations, and then fixing one version onto paper and giving them that to play.
That kind of addresses the follow-on question of how different are the computer simulations from when you have a human in the loop?
Well, it depends on the piece. Some of them are very different, and some of them, once you decide on a version, like again for the orchestra piece, once I decided on a set version, it stayed that way.
So what are some of the non-algorithmic elements that you introduce? The things that make it more interesting to watch and paint them?
Well, it depends if you define something as algorithmic or not algorithmic. I mean, when you're...
metaphorical, things like that.
You mean in other pieces?
Well, even in this piece, what are the things that you draw that are not having to do with systems?
This piece is pretty much all systems. Although, the source material for a loop that I might use in one piece, it's just something that comes into your head. I mean, music, you can't reduce it to, well, I'm going to set up this system in advance and then see what happens. I mean, you can, but it's a lot better to hear something. And so that's where the non-algorithmic stuff comes in. That's where the music comes in. For some reason, something comes into your ears and then you have to find a way to manifest it.
But it's either caprice, or it's random, or it's like emotive, or...
Yeah, maybe, or, yeah, I mean, all the things that you might describe to the sources for music. You know, and within a given piece, there may be a lot of different sources. One section may come from looking at a picture of some physical phenomena. Another section might come from hearing Tibetan music. Another section might come from, you know, watching water drip. I don't know.
Okay.
Are there any performers that you haven't worked with that you would like to write a piece specifically for? Because I know some composers write with certain performers in mind, and I was just wondering if there's any performers you haven't worked with or written for that you would like to.
Well, Ornette comes to mind, Ornette Coleman, because he's been a major inspiration for many years. And whether writing for or collaborating with, it's a gray area.
I noticed that Jim Cooley's was, the percussionist was on this little slip of paper that's in the program. Were the programs printed a long time ago, or did the piece change radically at the last minute?
They were printed a while ago, but after the programs were already sent to the printer, I realized I needed a percussionist. I was saying originally the software that I was using would generate enough interesting rhythmic material, different aspects of the patch, derive rhythmic material from the attacks of the various instruments, and you can filter out different components and transform them, and it just didn't have the impact of the drummer.
I hear an obvious influence of Charlemagne Palestine and Phil Niblock in there with their uses of pure sound. Were you inspired at all by them?
Well, I wouldn't say inspired, but I certainly like and respect the work.
Are there any questions back there? Or? Okay.
I'm curious about the process past putting it onto paper. When does the group actually get involved, and how many times do you get together to develop this performance?
We just had 2 rehearsals with this group. As I said, some of the musicians have worked with me a lot, and I have certain shorthand things that I can say to them, well, it's like this, and they go right to it. But it's also great players who are very adaptable in a lot of situations. I try to put as much material in the score as possible so that with minimum time. That's the other thing about working with systems where you don't, like a typical classical orchestra where you have to write out every note, and it's really imperative that the musicians play every black dot correctly. This is more about setting up a system, and the musicians, as they iterate out their loops and perform the transformations on it, they can rely on their own resources as much. It's a very, New York kind of requires that you don't have a lot of rehearsal time and space, and you find ways to maximize it.